Welcome to How to Yu-Gi-Oh!
Breakdown Dominus cards.
Chapter 1.
Okay, so in this video, I'm going to talk about Dominus cards. How I feel they are the way forward for hand traps and their usage, or rather lack of usage, as only one of them has become really famous. With that being said, let's get on with the rest of this video.
Chapter 2.
And so right here, you can see two Dominus cards that have come out recently. We have Dominus Spiral coming out last year and Dominus Spark coming out in the next set. Not this one, but the Blazing Dominion set, Dominus Spark. So let's read Dominus Spiral. During the turn in which your opponent has activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard, you can activate this card from your hand. Target one monster your opponent controls, return it to the hand or extra deck. Then if you have no traps in your graveyard, your opponent can special summon one monster from their graveyard. If you activated this card from your hand, you cannot activate the effects of light or dark monsters for the rest of this duel. You can only activate one Dominus Spiral per turn. Now, this is a card, since being released, has seen no competitive play or no rogue play at all. And I think that's fine. I think this card will have a use, even though we can see it used for light and dark decks can't use it, but I still feel there's a use for a card like this. So, great overall. Let's see Dominus Spark, a card coming out in the next set in Blazing Dominion. During the turn in which your opponent has activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard, you can activate this card from your hand. Target one monster your opponent controls, banish it. Then if you have no traps in your graveyard, your opponent can special summon a monster from their hand. If you activated this card from your hand, you cannot activate the effects of earth, water, fire, and wind monsters for the rest of this duel. You can only activate one Dominus Spark per turn. Now I see this as a really good card. It's removal, as a way of banishing a card, sure it targets, but we can't have everything. Overall, I see these Dominus cards as really good cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! And in my honest opinion, and in my hot take here, I see them as the way hand traps are supposed to be.
You can't handle the truth.
These are cards you can activate from the hand, have strong restrictions, so you cannot activate multiple of them. You cannot just pair them with other hand traps. Sure, you can pair a lot of Dominus cards together, but when you do so, you cannot activate certain, monsters of those attributes that is listed on the card. And I think that's how a hand trap is supposed to be, in my opinion. It's supposed to be strong, yes, but at the same time, it's supposed to do something, and the cost should be that you can only activate that hand trap, not that you can pair other hand traps together and have this hand trap mess that we have right now in Yu-Gi-Oh! So I'm all for more Dominus cards. Most definitely. Let's go on to the next slide.
Chapter 3.
And here we have it, the most famous and most used Dominus card, Dominus Impulse and Dominus Purge. Let's read Dominus Impulse and understand why it's used and why it's become so famous. If your opponent controls a card, you can activate this card from your hand. When a card or effect is activated that includes an effect that special summons a monster, negate that effect. Then if you have a trap card in your graveyard, destroy that card. If you activated this card from your hand, you cannot activate the effects of light, earth, and wind monsters for the rest of this duel. You can only activate one Dominus Impulse per turn.
There are no limits to the power of this card.
And then obviously there is the Dominus Purge right there. But the point I'm trying to make, as you can see here with Dominus Impulse, it's pretty strong, right? Dominus Purge basically has the same effect of Ash Blossom. You activate it, your opponent cannot, you stop a card from being added of this duel if it was activated from the hand. Now, Impulse is really good, in my opinion, is because I think why it's used is that light and darks can use Dominus Impulse. It's great. And another thing as well is that it's a solemn warning on a hand trap, which is pretty strong, which you can activate from the hand.
Nice!
Sure, it's strong because obviously dark and light decks can use it, but what makes it also good is that you cannot have any other hand traps except for dark or light in your deck, right? So you can't really utilize this card. So only dark decks or light decks can use this card, which is really, really good. It's something to consider. Overall, I'm all for cards like Impulse. Yes, Impulse, we can say, is really quite strong, but I think it deserves to be that strong, considering what you're giving up as a player using this. You cannot use, earth, wind, light, earth, or wind monsters, right? Effects for the rest of the duel if you activate it from the hand. This is huge. This is monumentally huge, right? Monumentally huge. And the other, purge is dark, fire and water, which is purge. So again, very massive. Purge obviously has maybe harsher restriction, but the point I'm trying to make is that Impulse has such a big restriction on what you can use if you use its full effect. You're locked out of 3 archetypes in the game, one of the popular ones being light, so you can't use light monsters either. Fantastic card. Overall, I like how it is. I like what Impulse represents. Sure, it might be, we as players might call it busted, but in my honest hot take, I think it's fine. I think we need more cards like Impulse that have a strong restriction and a strong effect. I think that's fine because majority of the player base isn't complaining about Impulse. And there's a reason for this. While Impulse is strong, you don't see Impulse in every single deck. The only deck you saw Impulse in was with Malice. And Malice was good because of other things. We also saw Impulse in Mitsurugi. But again, Mitsurugi was broken not because of Impulse. It was because of a 1-card starter, which you could put in every deck. And when we look at these decks, Dominus cards were not the cards we as players were complaining about. So that tells you something about Dominus cards. They're in a very good place in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now, and I think they should be the de facto cards that should replace hand traps going forward in the future. I'm hoping that this year we can see the banning or possibly the limitation of consequent hand traps that have just been plagues in Yu-Gi-Oh! Whether they be Ash Blossom, Droll Lockbird, just these hand traps that are just used for relatively evil stuff, and we can replace them with the Dominus cards, right? The Dominus cards, I think once they're in our meta scene and we use them more, I think the hand trap scene will be much more interesting because we are therefore asking the right questions when it comes to deck building with hand traps. Sure, by asking the question like, oh yeah, I would like to use Impulse, but if I use Impulse, I'll not be able to use light, earth, and wind monsters. Is it worth it? While I have a solemn warning in the hand, I can't use like a quarter of my deck. Asking questions like these, that's what's important. And I think in deck building, there should be strengths and you should have weaknesses. While you will have something going for you, at the same time, you should have something that will be taken away if you are given this strength. And I think that's the beauty of deck building, and that's the beauty of the game. If nothing has a weakness, then what's the point of strength in the first place? That's the way I see it. Let's head on to the conclusion.
Final chapter.
So overall, in my overall conclusion, all I'd like to say is when it comes to the Dominus cards, I absolutely love them. I love what these cards represent. I love how they're designed, and I like what they do for Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole. They fix the problem of hand traps. We've had an issue with hand traps in Yu-Gi-Oh! For quite a long time now. Whether it's Max C, whether it's Ash Blossom, whether it's Droll and Lockbird, whether it's Nibiru, whatever it is, right? Players have had issues with hand traps for the longest time since their introduction. But since Dominus cards have been released, majority of the player base has not really complained about their existence. They've been there. And while sure, the decks that have topped using them, really, it's been the decks or specific cards in those archetypes that we have complained about, which is the usual complaint. But the card itself in question that was in it, in the best Dominus cards, you hardly see it in conversation. We don't see it in ban list predictions. We don't see it in we don't see Dominus Impulse in, a card that is unfair to fight against. We don't see it in hand trap discussions of this card being a broken card or a hand trap that we don't need in the game. In fact, I would say we need more of Dominus-like hand traps in the game. And I think 4 isn't enough. I think let's make 8, let's make 10, and let's have every set have a Dominus card. I'm all for our Dominus overlords. Let them come in and let them sweep and take over. Because if everything is Dominus, nothing will be. I'm telling you, I'm all for Dominus cards. There's just nothing wrong with Dominus cards. They fix the problem, in my opinion, of going second. They're not broken because you can't play a multitude of them. And if you do play 2 or 3, then your deck is limited in what it can do. So you've got to really think. Deck building wise, it adds a lot of deck building challenges to deck building, which is what we need right now, and especially in the hand trap space. I feel the hand trap space in Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been cemented. It's become too safe. They're just hand traps that we know that we need to put into our decks. We know that you always put in a Molchami Fiolos, you always put in an Ash Blossom, you always put in a Jolan Lockbird. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. That hand trap space to me is too safe. It is too predictable. Let's change it a bit. And that's one of the reasons why I liked Impulse with Malice. Did I like facing against Malice? Absolutely. And one of the reasons why I liked facing against Malice was because I knew if I lost against Malice, it was not because they would hand trap me to death, because they didn't have any hand traps to begin with, because Impulse was there. It was because I didn't build my deck well enough, or I didn't account for the deck, or I didn't research the deck well enough. It is completely different when you face a deck and you know at the back of your mind that it's not going to hit you with a load of hand traps, that you can face the deck, actually face the deck. The biggest issue, in my opinion, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has is that you face it. We've not been facing actual decks. You just face the hand traps, right? When we look at last year, we actually, for the first time, in my opinion, as a community, we actually faced the decks. We didn't face hand traps, right? You look at Malice. Sure, people hate Malice, but you faced Malice. You didn't face it throwing hand traps at you, or just, you actually faced the deck. We had other issues again with, obviously, the Enderboard pieces, but that's neither here or there. The point I'm trying to make is that we actually faced the decks. And this is what I like about Dominus cards, and that's why I want to see more of them in the competitive space, because I feel it makes us better players. I believe I became a better player last year because I actually got to face decks. I actually had to come out of my comfort zone and learn about decks. The problem with hand trap safe zones, which we've been having for a long time, is that it disencourages players to learn about decks, to learn about the Yu-Gi-Oh! Environment, and just play it safe, right? Because I have Molchami Fiolos, because I have Ash Blossom, who cares? Do I need to know about the meta deck? I absolutely do not. I know that if my Fiolos, hits off, I know if my Ash Blossom hits off, majority of the time that will scare the opponent. Majority of the time they're going to be, they'll want to stop my Fiolos with an Ash Blossom. It becomes predictable. It becomes safe space. And you've got to build the decks to beat the hand trap wars. And so essentially, if your deck can beat the Fiolos and the Ash Blossom and can play through them, then that is a good deck. But in my opinion, that is too safe, and that is not the way it should be. I want to remove the sameness, the safeness, get that out of here, and let us have decks that just have a different array of hand traps that just, or maybe don't have hand traps at all, but I would say just have a different array of hand traps. So like some would play Dominus Impulse, some would play Dominus Purge, some would play Spiral, and some would play Dominus Spark. There'd be a differentiating factor on what decks could play, and we would see a differentiation of decks, and we would see diverse strategies. So I'm fully on board for our Dominus takeover. And that's all I've got to say in this video. Tune in next time as I talk about more things on this channel. Hope to see you soon.
We come to the end of this video. So, as I like to say, you are one step closer to becoming a Yu-Gi-Oh! Master. My fate, right, is in your hands.